Okay, we're learning a Sikha. This is in Chelik Tezvav, Parshas Vayetze, second Sikha. And we're on page 238, Seif Yud. Okay, but we're going to learn out of 65. Let me just give you a kitzir of what we learned here in the Sikha. The Sikha is discussing the Psukim in Yeshaya, which is the Nevuah on La'asad Lavai. In the Psukim there it says that La'asad Lavai v'halchu amim rabim. Many nations are going to want to come and join and see what's going on by the Yidden. They built a beautiful Beis HaMikdash. And the pasuk there says that they're going to say, V'chu v'na'ale al har Hashem ha'beis l'kei Yaakov, v'yireinu midrachav. It's one expression. Then it says, V'necha bar chaysav. He will teach us. The Yidden will teach them. And also they will go. They will go in their pathway. So what's the two expressions? Then it says, Kimitzi tetzei Torah, udvar Hashem Yerushalayim. So we learned Barichas Gedaila and the Sikha. The point is, there's two levels in learning Torah. There's a level where you learn Torah with the main focus, the main emphasis is the Havana V'Asage. You learn to understand the details. And then there's the Ma'aseh B'Poel. You're learning because you're interested in doing what Hashem wants. You understand more, you understand less. That's not what matters to you. You want to do what Hashem wants. So the Rebbe teaches that when it says V'yireinu midrachav, the word Yireinu is Melashon Meira, which means a teacher. That means to teach them. Havana V'Asage, they'll understand. Then when it says V'halachta, or what's the Lashon again, V'neilcha bar chaysav, that means that they're going to go. They're going to come and join to go to do whether they understand or don't understand. Now, what is this referring to? Since we're speaking about Goyim, it's speaking about the Sheva Mitzvahs Bnei Noach. Sheva Mitzvahs Bnei Noach, there's a lot of Torah to teach them. Just for Sheva Mitzvahs Bnei Noach, to fulfill Sheva Mitzvahs Bnei Noach, that includes all the Dinei Momenis and a lot of different halachas. There's a lot to learn, to teach them. And therefore, there are these two levels that the Goyim learn Torah. Sheva Mitzvahs Bnei Noach. Okay, now, the Rebbe also connected this to the pasuk that we say in the end of the Akofis, because the minig by the Akofis is you say machuz chamachas kadelamim umimshaltecha b'chol dor v'dor, and then you say kimitzi and teitzei Torah. What's the difference between melucha and memshala? You also say it every day in davening and ashrei. What's the difference between machuz chamachas kadelamim umimshaltecha b'chol dor v'dor? So usually in Chassidus it says that melucha is on a high level. Melucha refers to people that are accepting the king willingly. What's Memshala? Memshala is a ruler with an iron fist that rules whether people want, don't want, a dictator, he rules. Could be a dictator, but lavdavke. But someone that rules that people are subjects, people are subjugated to him. That's a Taich Memshala. Okay? So if so, the Pshat Memshala is on a lower level. In this Sikha though, like other points that we saw before, the Rebbe explains that Memshala is on a higher level than Melucha. Why? Because when people are accepting the Eibishter as the king with their Havana V'Asage, they appreciate and they understand what the Eibishter wants from them, and therefore they're accepting it. What does that mean? That's not expressing a full dedication and bittul to the Eibishter. Adarabah, we understand what the point of this is all about. Mashenke Memshala, on one hand, Memshala refers to people that don't get it, don't know, don't understand, but yet they still are mevatel themselves, sort of against their will, against their desire. That's expressing a much deeper dedication. Okay, so before we learn Seif Yud, let's see what it says in the Hara 65, where the Rebbe makes this point here about the difference between Melucha and Memshala. Okay, so Hara 65, Bahanisman, Hara 60. If you take a look in the Maimonim that are pointed to in Hara 60, this is a Maim Lukut Torah in a few places, another Maimonim of the Alter Rebbe. So there it says, the Bechinas Memshala, Hilamata Mebchinas Melucha. The expression of Memshala is below the concept of Melucha. Aval, Api, Amuva Baha'ara 55, based on what we learned, and we learned this before, in Hara 55, what does the Rebbe explain there? B'maylas habitul, the Bechinas Yerushalayim, al Bechinas Tzion, at the level of Yerushalayim. Although in Chassidus it usually says it's lower than Tzion. But here in this Sikha we learned that Yerushalayim is on a higher level. So Muvan Gam Benidin Didan, the same applies here regarding the two expressions of Memshala and Melucha. The Shayrish al Memshala, who bitul l'mayla mitam v'das. Memshala that refers to a king that's ruling over simple people that don't have to. The king is the king over his ministers, over the very chashuva people, and then the king is the king over who else? The villagers and the simple peasants that know nothing about who the king is, and he's a king over them as well. So the Memshala, on a simple level, they're less connected. They're less interested in what the king has to say. But in the Shayrish of Memshala, the fact that those simple villagers are bottled to the king without asking, without trying to understand, that has a higher Shayrish, that's deeper. And it's Mitzayner to different Madam Mechaimis. Today's Siddur from the Alter Rebbe and Yael Oyer from the Tzemach Tzedek, the Melucha, he mibchines pnimius ha-malchus. Malchus, just like every other sphere, is made up of the 10 spheres. There's Kesser Sheba Malchus, Chochma Sheba Malchus, and so on. So Melucha is the pnimius of Malchus, which includes Kesser, Chabad, Chagas, the Malchus. Memshala is mibchines Nehi the Malchus, the lowest levels of Malchus. What's Nehi? Nehi in a person's kaiches is that part in the person where you don't understand, you don't feel, but you're determined to do it. That's the concept of Nehi. Netzach, where a person is going to go forward, and Hoid, where he's going to do it even if he doesn't understand, and Yisayid is the same thing. You get connected to something and you follow through. The Nehi is the B'Pal Mamish. That's Belitam B'Ratzin. Even without having any interest and without having any understanding, the person does it anyways. So therefore, this level of Memshala is at a much higher level. That's the nice here. Okay, now let's continue. Let's go back and learn Sifyut. Okay. Yes, if you're ready. Jeder Inyan ist voran, wie kommt bei von Klali, und wer es richtig heißt bei Pratius. Everything you have it the way it is in the fullest sense, and the way it is then applied in different individual situations. The same is also with what this whole entire sikh is discussing, even though, what are we discussing over here? Psukim that are nevuah on lost lavai, that's when it's going to be fully fulfilled. But specifically, it applies to different time periods as well. Was damit wird sein, damit sie in Tetzitayret Varavayim Yerushalayim betachlis Ashleimos. We're talking about loss of love, then this possible will be fully fulfilled. Ubemeile euch die Shleimos von Malchuscha, Malchus, Geimer, Vidoir. Aber bepratius seinen die zwei Inyanim, Avol nicht beschleimusam, true not in their Shleimus, that's only when Mashiach comes, eingestellt in besonderes Manem. The concept of the Melucha of the Eibishter, as opposed to the Memshala of the Eibishter. And the two levels that we're speaking about over here, so in the history of Klal Yisrael, there are different time periods, different kinds of people, different levels of connection that applies in the time of the Beis HaMikdash, in the time of Galus, in the time of the first Beis HaMikdash, in the time of the second Beis HaMikdash. There are different time periods when this applies. Kishem, wie es ist da in dem Achillik zwischen Zman HaBayis and Zman HaGolus. So this is a concept that's explained in Chassidus, the difference between the nature of Yidden's Aveda when the Beis HaMikdash is standing and the time of Golus. Zman HaBayis hat mehr gewen Elokus begilui, when Elokus is openly seen, ubemeil is damals die Aveda von Yidden gewen beikir in det nur von Ave veratzen. Yidden's connection to the Eibishter was based primarily on love and a desire. Was hat sich gegeben a Geschmack in der Aveda, and every Yid had a pleasure in serving the Eibishter. Shenkim is Zman HaGolus. When Elokus is nit mehr begolui, we don't see the Eibishter in this way. Is damals die Aveda beikir mitzat Kabbalah Seil. Yiru Bittul. So in this time period, the main Aveda is characterized with the fact that we put ourselves aside. We don't understand, we don't see, we don't know, we're clueless. But yet, we accept and we do, and we serve the Eibishter with Yira and Bittul. Right, so the way that Rebbe puts it here, inside the Sikha is, it's a difference between Ava and Yira. Bisman HaBayis, it's Ava, Geschmack and pleasure, and Bisman HaGolus, it's Yira and Kabbalah Seil. But here there's an interesting Ara, 67, where the Rebbe brings that in Likutei Torah it seems to say different than what it says inside the Sikha. Okay, so let's see how the Rebbe will make sense out of this. Now, Likutei Torah Shamavu, in Likutei Torah, which it's Ara 66, this is Likutei Torah in Parshas V'Zeis HaBrocha. So there it says, Shebizman HaBayis, Kishaho Yegili Elikos, when there's godliness revealed in the world. So there, Hoisa Hiha Ishtachavo, B'Pchinis Pnimius, the Alter Rebbe there is explaining the lashon that we say in davening, that today that we can't now go and bow down. So the Alter Rebbe asks, why not? Someone's stopping you from being mishtachava today. So the Alter Rebbe says that the paich of ishtachava doesn't just mean a physical ishtachava. It means bepnimius. Ishtachava, what does ishtachava represent? When a person bows the head and the feet are on the same level. So to have that bittul pnimi, where you have no value of thinking that you're so important that your head is better than your toenails, and you bow down and your head and your toenails in front of the Eibishter are exactly the same, that feeling of ishtachava, b'pnimius, the Alter Rebbe says, is not possible to do today. Only bisman abayis, then you could have the real battle at Tzenchem Pnei Tzenish Ein L'Rotzem V'Chayfetz Zacher. Mashenkim bisman agalus, you could bow down today as well. But it's different. It's a chitzonius the gishtachava, which means shemachnia es haguf shelo yimrei. Today the guf is much more powerful. The Yetzer Hara is much more stubborn. And when a person bows today, it's not about a real inner feeling of expression of absolute bittul that the taka has no other will at all. Adarabah, today what the ishtachava represents, the person has another ratzon. He has a guf that's very strong, and he has to break it. He has to put himself down on the floor. He has to break himself against the other ratzon that he has. That's the taich of the Alter Rebbe. So what do you see here? The Alter Rebbe is not making a difference between Ava and Yira. There was Mashra Beis Hamikdash Kayam, it's Ava, and Mizman HaGolus is Yira. The Alter Rebbe is saying even regarding Yira as well. Yira, which means the awe from Hashem, or the bittul to the Eibishter, the bittul, Mashra Beis Hamikdash Kayam, was on a deeper level. There was no ratzon acher. It's a real bittul. Today, the bittul is very external. Today, we have a very stubborn guf. And the bittul is that you have to fight with it, struggle with it, and break it, and bash it. So even mitzad the inyan of bittul, the Alter Rebbe is explaining that B'zman Shabbos Hamikdash Kayim, it's a greater level of bittul. And not mitzad the inyan of, not only the ma'ila of B'zman Shabbos Hamikdash Kayim is not only mitzad the inyan of Ava, also mitzad the Yira and Kabbalah Soil as well, it's greater. That's the Rebbe's question here. Okay.
Even the body. Then.
What?
Even the body in that time.
In today or then?
Then
it was in a higher level. It was more of a keli for bittul. When they saw Lacoste, it's not only that it brought out in them a deeper geschmack and love for the Eibishter, it also brought out a greater bittul. When you come to the Beis Hamikdash and you see the Nismi, you see the Eibishter, it brought out a tremendous bittul in them, which is lacking today. So in the concept of Yira and bittul, we don't come to their level. Okay, Aval, Re'ei Behanisman Belakut Siches Chelik Tes Omid 73 ve'elech. However, if you take a look in Lakut Siches Chelik Tes, and you look at the Mara Makaimis that are brought there, this is the Sich in Parshas Eikev. There, the Rebbe says the Nafkemine Bein Kamus Habitul Umuhus Habitul. There's a difference between when you talk about bittul. When is there more bittul? In the time of the Beis Hamikdash or today? So it depends what you're focusing on. Are you talking about the Kamus of the bittul or the Muhus of the bittul? What does the Rebbe say there in that sikha? So without getting into the gan sarichis, it's a whole long sikha, but the point the Rebbe says is that although on one hand, there's a deeper bittul because the person doesn't have any other ratzon, but the essence of bittul. What is the essence of bittul? The essence of bittul means nicht ich. It's not me. Where do you have that more? Or today? That the essence of bittul, the muhus of the bittul, you actually have more today. When does a person have to fight with himself more? Where is there more of nicht ich? When you're befedish arm, it says you have a guf that has other interests, and afal pikein you're machnia, you're breaking that guf. As far as the quantity of the bittul, meaning how much of the person is in sync with this bittul, how much of the person is involved in this bittul, much more. As far as the kamas of the bittul is concerned, the person was more keli to this. He got it more. He was more involved. So the bittul permeated more of his existence. But mitzad darin yin gufe, mitzad the muhus of the bittul, it was lacking because it's less of the nish. The kudah of bittul is nish, not me. That essence of bittul is man shebismidish kayam. You don't have it as much as it is today. So therefore, it comes out that the maila of what the Rebbe says here inside the Sikha, the Rebbe says that today, Bisman HaGolus, the maila is in Yir and Kabbalah soil, the emes quality, the emes muhus of bittul and Kabbalah soil that we have today does not exist Bisman Shabbos Hamikdash Kayim. The bittul that there was then was bekamos more, but in the muhus of it, it's less. So therefore, what is the maila of Bisman Shabbos Hamikdash Kayim more than today? And then you have Ava. Regarding Ava, Geschmack, that was Bisman Shabbos Hamikdash Kayim. There's a maila, but mitzad the yirim bittul today, the etzem of the bittul, the muhus of the bittul is much more. Okay, now the Rebbe continues also regarding
obviously the Ava is going to be greater. They saw everything in a much more clear way.
Then is much Beis Hamikdash Kaim, correct?
That
I don't know, Lav Dafka it's a Chiddush, no? But the emes is that in other places, the Rebbe doesn't bring it here, Meiz Tam Shiyeh, but in other places it actually says that there's in the Inyan of Ava, there's also a Maila today, because there's an Ava that comes from closeness, and there's an Ava that comes from distance, when there's an Ava of Tzimoin. Right, when you're thirsting for something, the famous word of the Baal Shem Tov, Tzomah L'cha Nafshi, that halavai b'kodesh chazisicha, that halavai when Mizmar Beis Hamikdash Kayam, we could maintain the same fire of thirst. So even in B'negei Inyan of Ava, there's a mile in the Ava today. But that the Rebbe doesn't bring here. Here the Rebbe is focusing on coming to explain the Inyan of Memshala. The whole mile of Memshala is when one has to break oneself. That's what the Rebbe is focusing on, the fact that B'zman HaGolus there's a mile in the Bittul. Okay, let's see it. Another Nekuda here inside the Sikha. Okay, Azoi. So till there we're talking about the distinction between Zman HaGolus and Zman HaBayis. But now the Rebbe talks about Zman HaBayis Gufa, there's Bayis Rishon, Bayis Sheni. Azoi is Echen der Rebbe von Zman HaBayis Gufa voran an Unterschied zwischen dem Zman von Bayis Rishon and dem Zman von Bayis Sheni. There's also the difference between the first and second Beis Hamikdash, which what the Rebbe is about to say is also based on Lekut Teira Parsha and Rosh Hashanah. The Bayis Rishon is gebaut geworden durch Shlomo HaMelech. In dem Zeit, when Kai Mesire Bashlomusa, when Shlomo built the Beis Hamikdash, he was the 15th generation, and in his time period, it's like the moon is full in the middle of the month. It's the brightest time in the night of the month. This was the brightest time for Klal Yisrael. Shleimus Agili Delekos from Bechinas Bina, which represents Alma Decheira, a world of absolute freedom from any disturbances. That's when there was no the Plishtim and whatever other goyim that were around that kept on fighting the Yidden by Shlomo Melech Shalom Yeh B'Yomov, and it was Shleimus of Klal Yisrael. Till Moshiach comes, Klal Yisrael will never again experience that Shalom and Menucha that they had at that time, Shlomo Melech. After that, things only went down. And there was another stage of Birurim that began that will only complete when Mashiach comes. But at that time, from Avraham Avinu until Shlomo Melech, there was a whole process building up, and they came to the Shleimus, Shlomo Melech. 15 generations, yeah. Was the far that Yidden demot given b'matzav cherus mishibud hagayim. They had a complete freedom of any shibud of goyim around them. Is der Gilu from Migdash and Welt given b'ofen naila. That's a result of the fact that there was a tremendous godly revelation in the world. And therefore, naturally, the way Yidden served the Eibishter was also responding to this tremendous revelation, which is von Ava, with a love. Das is the beginning von Tzion, was Mimena Teire Kanal. This is related to the point that Rebbe spoke about before in the Sikha, that concept of Tzion. Tzion means an entity that sees himself just as a sign of an existence that's connected to something else, right? It's seen as a marker that says that I'm here to indicate that there's something else. The whole existence of Yidden in that time, they were completely connected, totally connected to the Eibishter. Oh, but in Zman from Bayis Sheni, in the second Beis Hamikdash, was damals is nicht gewähnt, der Gilin, as Aifim, wie die Gemara sagt, so then they did not have the same level of revelation. So the Gemara says, Achabda Choser Hey, the word Achabda that speaks about the second Beis Hamikdash, that the Eibishter's honor will be in the second Beis Hamikdash, but the word Achabda is written without that letter Hey in the end. Why? Because Hey, Dvarim Choser B'Bayis Sheni, there were 5 things missing in the second Beis Hamikdash, Orem, V'Kapayres, Cholo. Und die Jiden sind gewähnt unter der Schlitte von Malchei Omais. Even after they built the second Beis Hamikdash, they were still under the rulership of from Bavel, or I forgot which Melech it was that gave them the permission to build a Beis Hamikdash. Belshazzar it was, or whoever it was. Daryavish. So they still, it's like he gave them permission to build a Beis Hamikdash. They weren't the Melucha that there was. They had Shar Shushan in the second Beis Hamikdash. They were still under the Shlita of Gaim. Is the Aveda damals given be'iker mit Yere Obittel b'chinas Yerushalayim Canal. And therefore, in that time period, the Aveda was different. It was different than the first Beis Hamikdash. It wasn't with the same level of Ava, the way they were connected then. The Aveda was with the level of Yerushalayim. Okay, al derech zeh is euch der Chiluk zwischen Malchuscha Malchus Kol Elamim und Memshaltecha b'chol der v'der. The 2 expressions that you say every day. Kol Elam, the Malchus of the Eibishter, and the Memshala. Wie es hat sich ausgedrückt in der Unterschied zwischen die 2 Zmanim, as it's expressed in these 2 time periods. In Zman von Bayis Rishon is der Seder an Hoge gewähnt b'chinas Melucha. The Eibish's kingdom was revealed openly, and Yidden accepted it willingly. Sei benegei Yidden. Azer Aved is given in a Meifem Fun Nachusi Beratzen Kiblu. Therefore, they accepted Hashem's kingdom happily and willingly. Und sei im Welt bechlal. Es ist given as man von Menucha v'Shalva. It was a time of peace and tranquility. The Bayis Sheni is given be'ikir the Eifem from Memshala. In the second Beis Hamikdash, the main Aveda was Memshala, which means Sai B'Avedis Yisrael. Aveda b'yireh, durch kfiyeh, v'hechrech. In the second Beis Hamikdash, it says that then the Yidden came at the time of the second Beis Hamikdash to a Bali Tshuva. If you learn the Psukim that it says in Ezra and Nehemiah about the Matzav of Klal Yisrael in that time period, you'll and if you ever learned what it says there, you'll be shocked. The things that went on in that time period, the intermarriage that there was. Yidden didn't keep Shabbos properly, b'chlal. One of the main things about, for example, just as an example, one of the main things about the Gzeira of Muktzeh, which Alter Rebbe brings us in Shulchan Aruch, was made in that time. Nehemiah was Geizer. You saw Yidden Shabbos, the Pasha weren't keeping Shabbos. So in order to be Mechazek Shabbos, he was Geizer Dinyan of Muktzeh, to remind the Yidden about Shabbos. They were even after they came up, and they built already, the second Beis Hamikdash, the Yidden were not in a simple matzah of Klal Yisrael. And that was only 70 years of Galus. Could you imagine? Yeah. So then it was Kfiyah v'Hechrech. It's a different nature of an Aveda. In Welt, as es given as man von Mulchames. At that time, there was many wars, and Amim Rabim haben Schuld given of Yidden. There were other nations that had their control over Yidden. Ob Mele gedacht ankommen, as soll sich annehmen Memshaltoi, Shal HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Here it's the Memshal of the Eibishter, which rules against the will of the people, against the will of the Yidden even, against the people in the world. Okay, we're not going to learn all the hardest today, but just one short ta'ara, 75. Mitzvah next week we'll learn 72 and 73. But in Ta'ara 75, the Rebbe shows how this, how the Alter Rebbe says in L'Kutei Torah, how you see this Inyan also in the Lashon of, it says Nachuscha Malchus Kol Eilamim, and then it says Mem Shaltecha B'Chol Der V'Der. What's the difference? Why here does it say B'Chol Der V'Der? So the Alter Rebbe says Re'ei L'Kutei Torah Dvarim Sham, Rosh Hashanah Nun Vav Dalid. Mem Shaltecha B'Chol Der V'Der means Afilu Der Amabel. Why, when it says two generations, what is it hinting to? Der Amabel and Der Afloge. That's what it hints to. That the Eibish's Memshal is in the world, even in such a low time period. There's a Pirush from the Ramah. The Ramah is a Sefer. I think it's Torah Sa'ila that he's quoting from. It's a Sefer from the Ramah that he says the Pirushim in davening. So the Ramah says, a Pirush Dar V'Dar, Shagam Achrei Shehechrev Beis HaMikdash, even after the Churban, like Silik Hashgachasai. The Eibishter does not remove his Hashgacha on the world. So you see here that the emphasis of B'chol Dar V'Dar is coming to say that not only in a time period where the Eibishter is revealed, but even in a time like the Mabul or the Flogger, and even after the Churban, you don't have the Melucha, but you have the Memshal of the Eibishter. That's the second part of the pasuk. Okay. Machusai Bakoil Mamshala. Bakoil, meaning even Bakoil, even those that are not. What's the beginning of the? Where's that lashon again? Machusai Bakoil. Saying it starts off. Yeah. Machusai Bakoil Mashallah. Interesting. So it starts with the term Machusai and it concludes with Mashallah.
And also from the Ramah.
He's quoting from the Ramah. Interesting.
I'm saying the Yel also
has
a separate. Tzedek also has a separate.
A sefer. Yeah, Lord, this is the sefer from the Tzemach Tzedek. Yeah.
But this is from the Ramah.
No, brengt from the Ramah.
I noticed in this sefer keeps bringing a lot from the Yel from Tzemach Tzedek of Tilim.
Yeah.
Like in a very, very build decoration.
Yeah, could be.
It's not necessarily involved. But it's not necessarily Gila. It can also be where Hashem is hidden, but he's still controlling the world.
Correct.
But what's obvious?
Yeah, correct. Ja, was sagst du?
Ja, staan.